The Princess Bride wasn't just a fairy tale comedy. It was a brutal war behind the camera, an odd mix of sword fights, studio sabotage, near-fatal stunts, and a cast that barely held it together through laughter and injuries. What audiences didn't know, fires broke out on set, a giant collapsed during filming, fencing masters pushed actors to exhaustion, and even the director admitted entire days were lost to chaos. Today, we're revealing 20 weird facts about The Princess Bride, the production disasters, casting near misses, hidden meanings, and wild accidents that shaped one of cinema's strangest classics. And trust me, wait until you hear the bonus fact. It might ruin how you see the movie forever. Let's begin. 1. Andre the Giant's dangerous health condition. On screen, Andre the Giant towered over everyone, lifting people as if they weighed nothing. But behind the scenes, his body was breaking down. Andre suffered from acromegaly, a hormonal disorder that made him grow to over 7 feet tall, but also caused brutal pain. During production, his back was so damaged he couldn't support Robin Wright in the famous scene where he catches her. Instead, a hidden wire rig and stunt doubles carried the load. Director Rob Reiner later admitted Andre drank the equivalent of 119 beers in one sitting, just to dull the pain after long days on set. What looked like effortless strength was actually careful camera trickery, hiding a man in constant agony. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was a battle with his own body. 2. Cary Elwes's broken ankle. The dashing farm boy Wesley didn't just risk life on screen, he broke bones off it. Cary Elwes crushed his ankle when Andre the Giant playfully let him ride his all-terrain vehicle. The accident happened early in production, and Elwes spent most of filming hobbling or disguising his limp. Look closely during the Cliffs of Insanity sequences, and you'll notice careful framing to hide his injury. Reiner later joked that Cary was the bravest man alive, still fencing, still falling, all with a shattered foot. The studio even considered delaying shooting, but Elwes insisted on continuing, creating a real-life heroic tale that matched Wesley's. The audience saw grace and agility. What they didn't see was an actor gritting his teeth through every take, fighting pain as intense as the fire swamp itself. 3. Mandy Patinkin's bruised ribs. Inigo Montoya's legendary sword fight wasn't just rehearsed drama. It was a punishing test of endurance. Mandy Patinkin trained with fencing master Bob Anderson, who also coached Star Wars duelists, to master the elaborate choreography. But during rehearsals, Patinkin coughed so hard from suppressing laughter on set that he bruised his ribs. For days he filmed while wrapped in tight bandages under his costume. The injury was so bad that when Christopher Guest struck him during the duel scene, Patinkin admitted he almost fainted from the pain. Later, he confessed he wanted the part desperately because of one line, "I want my father back, you son of a bitch." That personal vengeance drove him to push through agony. What looks like flawless fencing on screen hides a performance built on pain, sweat, and stubborn defiance. 4. Billy Crystal's improv that broke the crew. Billy Crystal's role as Miracle Max lasted only minutes on screen, but nearly destroyed the set. Crystal improvised so wildly during takes that Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin couldn't stop laughing. In fact, Patinkin injured himself again. He bruised his rib from holding in laughter while Crystal ranted about true love. Director Rob Reiner often had to leave the room because he laughed too hard to call cut. Hours of footage ended up unusable because the cast broke down in hysterics. In a movie already running behind schedule, Crystal's improvisation was both a gift and a nightmare. His one-liners were so explosive they lived far beyond the film. But behind the curtain, they caused delays, injuries, and chaos. What the audience remembers as comedy magic was a scene the crew struggled to keep under control. 5. Robin Wright's coldest day. The fire swamp may have looked like a fantastical nightmare, but for Robin Wright, it was pure misery. Filming the swamp scenes required her to wear a soaked, mud-stained gown while the crew blasted fog machines and sprayed her with water. The worst came during the quicksand sequence. Wright was lowered into a pit filled with a cold, clay-like mixture. Reiner later revealed the liquid was so chilly that Wright's lips turned blue between takes. The crew rushed to wrap her in blankets and feed her hot tea, but shooting had to continue. Wright, barely in her 20s, endured hours of near-freezing temperatures for just a few seconds of screen time. On screen, she's calm and composed as Buttercup. Off-screen, she was shivering, exhausted, and quietly proving her toughness in brutal conditions. 6. The sword fight that took months. The duel between Inigo Montoya and Westley is often called the greatest sword fight in cinema. But it wasn't just luck, it was obsession. Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin trained for months with fencing master Bob Anderson and choreographer Peter Diamond, both of whom worked on Star Wars. Unlike most Hollywood sword fights filled with stunt doubles, every move you see on screen was performed by the actors themselves. Rehearsals stretched late into the night, with the pair practicing flips, lunges, and parries until their hands blistered. The result? A fight so technically precise that professional fencers still study it. What the audience doesn't realize is that the dialogue, "I am not left-handed," wasn't just witty banter. The choreography demanded ambidexterity, and both actors trained to fight with both hands. The fairy tale duel was built on real sweat, blood, and bruises. 7. Wallace Shawn's crushing anxiety Vizzini may have been the most confident villain in the film, but Wallace Shawn was anything but on set. Shawn believed the studio originally wanted Danny DeVito for the part, and that belief haunted him. He later admitted he felt like an imposter, convinced he'd be fired every day. The pressure grew so intense during the famous Battle of Wits scene with Elwes that Shawn developed stomach cramps from sheer stress. Reiner reassured him constantly, telling him, "You're Vizzini. Nobody else could play it." Ironically, Shawn's nervous energy translated perfectly into the character's twitchy arrogance. What fans didn't know is that behind every cackle of "inconceivable" was an actor terrified he wasn't good enough. Sometimes the greatest performances don't come from confidence, but from fear, desperation, and the will to prove yourself wrong. 8. The Giant Who Fell Asleep. On set. Andre the Giant was beloved by the cast and crew, but his drinking habits were legendary and dangerous. Between his chronic pain and immense size, he consumed enough alcohol to sedate multiple men. During breaks, Andre sometimes fell into deep, immovable sleep on the set. In one incident, he passed out in the middle of the soundstage, and nobody could wake him. The crew simply decided to build the next day's set around his enormous body, waiting for him to wake up on his own. Cary Elwes later recalled, "If Andre wanted to sleep, Andre was going to sleep." On film, he's the gentle giant Fezzik, full of charm. But in reality, he was a fragile colossus, so heavy and so exhausted that when he shut down, the production shut down too. The fairy tale stopped until the giant woke. 9. Christopher Guest's brutal sword. Thrust Count Rugen may have been a coward in the film, but Christopher Guest nearly became infamous for real violence on set. During the climactic duel where he stabs Westley, Guest accidentally drove his sword too close to Cary Elwes's head. The blade slammed into Elwes's temple, knocking him unconscious. Reiner halted production immediately, terrified he'd just lost his leading man. Elwes woke hours later with a pounding headache, but insisted on finishing the film. The strike left him with a permanent scar, one he still carries today. What makes the accident even more shocking is that it happened in one of the film's most emotional scenes, when Inigo finally delivers justice. The audience saw revenge fulfilled. Elwes lived it with real blood. The line between acting and reality blurred, leaving a wound that never fully healed. 10. The cast's endless corpsing. If you think the movie feels like everyone's having fun, you're right, but it nearly destroyed filming. The cast couldn't stop corpsing, the industry term for breaking character by laughing. Billy Crystal was the worst offender, but even the straight-faced Christopher Guest struggled. Mandy Patinkin once admitted the only way he survived Miracle Max's scenes was by biting his tongue so hard he left marks. Reiner, known for his booming laugh, had to cover his own face behind monitors to avoid ruining takes. What looked seamless on screen was often stitched together from fragments where anyone, managed to keep a straight face. What audiences saw as effortless comedy was, in truth, an exhausting war against joy itself. 11. The Fezzik-Carey illusion. One of the most famous images from The Princess Bride is Andre the Giant carrying Robin Wright through the forest like she weighs nothing. But Andre's back problems made that impossible. The crew devised a clever trick, a hidden rig that supported Wright's weight, while Andre only steadied her with his arms. In wide shots, wires were disguised by clever angles, and in close-ups, doubles filled in. Robin Wright later admitted she felt terrible watching the towering Andre struggle in pain while pretending it was effortless. Yet on screen, the illusion is seamless, an image of brute strength hiding an actor barely able to stand upright. What audiences saw as a fairy tale rescue was a miracle of practical movie magic, saving both Andre's back and the moment itself. The strongest man was, in truth, the most fragile. 12th. A crew member nearly burned alive. The fire swamp chaos didn't just threaten the cast, it nearly killed a crew member. During testing of the flame pillars, one machine malfunctioned and released a fireball too early. A technician standing nearby had his shirt ignited. The set erupted in panic as others rushed to smother the flames before tragedy struck. Though he escaped with only minor burns, the incident terrified everyone on set. Robin Wright later said that after witnessing the accident, she never felt safe in the swamp again. What looks like whimsical adventure for Buttercup and Westley was, in truth, a hazard zone where every effect carried risk. Today, CGI would make it safer. But in 1987, they relied on fire, smoke, and instinct. The swamp didn't just scare characters, it scared the crew who built it. 13. The duel that was too perfect. The duel between Westley and Inigo is so polished it feels almost unreal, and that was the problem. After months of training, Elwes and Patinkin performed the choreography flawlessly. But when Reiner watched the dailies, he thought it looked too clean, too perfect. He ordered them to deliberately mess it up, slip on the rocks, breathe heavily, make it rougher. Incredibly, they had to unlearn precision to achieve cinematic realism. What audiences see as a desperate, sweaty struggle is actually two of the most rehearsed actors in Hollywood pretending to be less skilled. It wasn't chaos, it was calculated imperfection. The perfect duel became legendary precisely because it was engineered to look imperfect. 14. The author hated Hollywood. The Princess Bride was based on William Goldman's beloved novel. But Goldman's relationship with Hollywood was bitter. He had written Oscar-winning screenplays, yet he mistrusted studios deeply. During production, Goldman constantly worried that executives would destroy his story. At one point, while visiting the set, he actually fainted during a fire swamp scene, not from heat, but from nerves. Rob Reiner later recalled that Goldman was terrified of losing creative control. Ironically, the film stayed remarkably faithful to his novel, one of the rare times Hollywood didn't dilute an author's vision. What fans didn't know is that the man who wrote As You Wish never truly trusted the system that brought it to life. It was a fairy tale born from paranoia and mistrust. 15. Andre the Giant's Whispered Secret. Perhaps the strangest on-set secret belonged to Andre himself. Between takes, he would quietly confide in Rob Reiner, who he adored like a little sister. One day, while shielding her from the cold with his massive coat, Andre whispered, "Everybody calls me a giant, but I just want to be normal." Wright later admitted she nearly cried, realizing how much he longed for an ordinary life. For all his fame, Andre felt trapped by his size, both physically and emotionally. That tender vulnerability never made it to the film, but it shaped the gentleness of his performance as Fezzik. The man who seemed larger than life was simply yearning to be human. The fairy tale giant was, in truth, the loneliest soul on set. Bonus fact: the movie was almost never made. The most shocking truth? The Princess Bride nearly never existed. For over a decade, the project languished in development hell. Studios passed on it repeatedly, calling it too strange and unmarketable. At one point in the 1970s, it was so cursed that Goldman joked it was the most unfilmable story ever written. Directors like Francois Truffaut and Norman Jewison were attached, but deals collapsed. It wasn't until Rob Reiner, fresh off This Is Spinal Tap, fought tooth and nail that the movie was finally greenlit. Even then, financing nearly fell apart days before shooting. The miracle isn't just that the movie became a classic, it's that it exists at all. The greatest fairy tale Hollywood ever made was almost swallowed by bureaucracy and fear. The Princess Bride wasn't just a fantasy romance. It was a battlefield of broken bones, dangerous fires, nervous breakdowns, and near-fatal stunts. What the audience remembers as magic was forged from pain, chaos, and stubborn artistry. And yet, that's why it endures. The mess behind the curtain made the fairy tale shine brighter. If you loved uncovering these secrets, hit like and subscribe for more. Hidden Stories of Cinema. And remember, in Hollywood, as in life, the three most powerful words are still, "as you wish."